Amazing twist. Lonely billionaire discovered by a young hero. Touching change that will move you. Emily took a deep breath as she faced another relentless day. The rising sun hadn't yet broken the horizon, but already the rich aroma of coffee filled her cramped kitchen, while the chaotic mental checklist began. 2 jobs, bills, and an ambitious teenage son weighed heavily on her mind. The electric bill loomed large in her thoughts, a constant reminder of their struggles, alongside the creeping threat of eviction that loomed darker with each passing moment. Despite the financial burden, Emily fiercely dedicated herself to supporting Alex's dreams, fostering his passion for technology, each late-night brainstorming session a testament to her love and determination. But doubts gnawed at her. Was she doing enough? Was she prepared to face more sacrifices? Alex had the talent, but did he have the grit to turn his ideas into something real? He stumbled through his thoughts, striving to carve a path to his ambitions. That rainy Saturday, the shadows cast by dismal clouds seemed to echo their situation. A flicker of excitement pulled him towards the old, decaying mansion, rumored to belong to Mr. Sterling, a forlorn relic of wealth that now lurked like a ghost in their neighborhood. When Alex knocked on the door, anticipation bubbled within him, but so did trepidation. What would he find inside? The door creaked open, revealing Mr. Sterling, a lonely figure trapped in memories of past glories. In the dusty mansion, their worlds collided. Alex marveled at the shadows of a bygone era, while Mr. Sterling sifted through regret. Their unlikely friendship blossomed over shared laughter and profound knowledge, and Alex reveled in the insight garnered from a man who had once gripped the reins of power. Yet shadows ducked behind walls, whispering secrets Alex wasn't prepared for. Pressure mounted as Alex prepared for a nationally recognized tech competition. He discovered the rumblings of scandal tied to Mr. Sterling's downfall, stories of ambition sacrificed on the altar of greed. As the walls echoed these haunting tales, Alex wrestled with the growing unease in his gut. With his project advancing, whispers of doubt surfaced. Would his inventions be deemed authentic or mere reflections of his mentor's legacy? Confronted by uncertainty, he hesitated, torn between wanting to honor Mr. Sterling and the innate need for recognition. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue.
The night of the competition drew near, and with it came the heart-pounding anguish of keeping secrets. The fear of disappointing Mr. Sterling danced within him, intertwining with dreams that felt as fragile as the cobwebs lacing the mansion's corners. Faced with this inner turmoil, Alex caught sight of himself in the mirror, a reflection encapsulated in doubt, hope, and determination meshed in one. Just then, the doorbell rang, piercing the dense silence that enveloped his thoughts. With his heart racing, he turned toward the sound, facing the threshold of change. What awaited him could revitalize their dreams or shatter them completely. Caught in a whirlwind of emotion, Alex braced himself for whatever awaited on the other side, questions thrumming in his mind like a ticking clock. Would he preserve his relationship with Mr. Sterling, or would ambition push him to forsake everything they had built together? His heart pounded as he opened the door, revealing none other than Mr. Sterling. The old man's presence seemed to dominate the doorway, framing him like a relic of another time. His eyes, full of wisdom and regret, met Alex's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. In that moment, the weight of their relationship bore down on Alex, both comforting and crushing. "Alex," Mr. Sterling began, his voice steady yet laced with vulnerability, "I know tonight is important for you. I wanted to speak before the competition." The kindness in his baritone soothed some of Alex's inner turmoil, but also amplified his fear of failure. "Of course, Mr. Sterling. What's on your mind?" Alex replied, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. They sat at the kitchen table, their usual place for conversations. This time, however, the air felt electric, charged with unspoken truths and risks yet to be taken. Mr. Sterling leaned forward. "This journey you're on, it's essential for more than just your success. It's about your values, Alex. I've seen many young talents drowned in the desire for recognition. What do you want from this competition?" The question pierced Alex's mind. Did he want to prove himself as an innovator, or was he driven by vanity? Guilt clawed at him as he thought about Mr. Sterling, his unintended mentor. Could he navigate this journey without losing sight of the values imparted to him? I want to show that I can create something meaningful, something that reflects my ideas, not just yours, Alex confessed, his stomach twisting. He didn't intend to hurt Mr. Sterling, but the truth slipped out in unfiltered urgency. I understand, Mr. Sterling replied, his expression solidified into something resolute. The ambition I had once consumed me, but I destroyed much in the pursuit of success, my family, my reputation. Remember, Alex, it's okay to seek recognition, but not at the cost of your integrity. These words burrowed deep within him, resonating with the fears he couldn't quite articulate.
Could he truly create independently while paying homage to the man whose shadows loomed over his aspirations? As the day turned to evening, Alex found himself pacing restlessly, battling a consuming sense of urgency. Should he embrace the pieces of Mr. Sterling's legacy or strike out boldly, alone? Each option felt equally steeped in potential loss. Sleep eluded him, his mind whirring with visions of robots whirring and screens glowing, his project entangled in an intricate web of ethics and ambition. The consequences of his choices sparked wild imaginings, familial pride on one hand, potential betrayal of his mentor on the other. The stakes loomed high, and memories of his conversations with Mr. Sterling instilled both comfort and dread. As dawn's light broke through the curtains, Alex stood at the precipice of decision. He could hide behind the dual shadows of both failure and ambition, or confront his deepest fears and step boldly into the unknown. A thread of determination tugged at him. He would navigate this path on his own terms, but the price felt daunting. Just then his phone buzzed, jolting him back to reality. It was a notification about his tech project entry. His heart raced anew, and in that moment the path ahead became clearer. But then a second notification flashed, an unexpected message from a competitor who seemed determined to undermine his efforts, revealing a new layer of conflict in this already tumultuous journey. The time had come for Alex to confront not only his deepest fears, but also those seeking to undermine him. Would he deploy what he had learned, or would he falter under pressure? With his heart racing and his mind swirling with tension, Alex realized he could no longer postpone confronting both his past and the fierce competition that lay ahead. The moment of truth had arrived. With the early morning light spilling into his cramped apartment, Alex felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. He could almost hear the echoes of Mr. Sterling's warning swirling in his thoughts, mingled with the sharp, taunting words of his rival. The competitor's message lingered ominously in his mind. You think you can win? You're just riding the coattails of someone else's success. Doubt clawed at him, fighting the resolve he desperately sought to cultivate. Was he truly just an echo of Mr. Sterling's legacy? The question melted into a gnawing ache as he stood, rooted in indecision. The vision of his project was clearer than ever, yet the path to achieving it felt marred by insecurity. He had to wrestle control of his narrative back from the shadows that haunted him. After fidgeting with his phone, Alex burst into action. He could no longer hide away, stifled by lingering fears. He needed to reaffirm his identity, not as Mr. Sterling's protege, but as an innovator in his own right. Taking a deep breath, Alex jotted down the core essence of his project, not merely technology for its own sake, but a meaningful connection that could enhance human interaction. With every word he penned, he found fragments of his own voice surfacing beneath the surface. This was his opportunity to create something original, even if it risked defying the expectations laid out for him. The weight of his choice grew heavy, but strangely, it also stirred a flicker of excitement within him. Perhaps each decision he faced, including the competition, was a chance to define what his success would look like, not just through acclaim, but through authenticity. Striding toward his makeshift workstation, Alex began to lay out his plans. Hours passed in a whirlwind of machinery and ideas. Every cog and circuit was a stroke of his own innovation, and with every tool he grasped, he felt a surge of empowerment. Instead of allowing the looming competition to overshadow him, he channeled the pressure into a laser focus on his project. As the sun began to dip in the sky, a sense of urgency pushed him to break for the evening. He took a moment to reflect, pacing the dimly lit room. The duality of his ambition tugged at him incessantly, forcing him to confront the roadblocks he had erected. It became clear that his greatest adversary was not the competitor who sought to undermine him, but rather the self-doubt that threatened to pull him backward. Navigating through the sea of thoughts swirling in his mind, Alex landed on a crucial consideration. He needed to draw a line between his ambition and his integrity, a line distinctly his own. As a grasp of clarity finally broke through the noise, he realized that true innovation comes from a place of integration, of ideas, values, and self-authenticity. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again, snapping him from his thoughts. Another message,
this time from an unexpected source, Mr. Sterling, reaching out to offer his support, acknowledging the fierce competition ahead. It was a stark reminder that he would never be alone on this journey, even as he forged his own path. Filled with a renewed sense of purpose, Alex turned to face the night, an exhilarating mix of apprehension and anticipation welling within him. The competition loomed ahead, and so did the possibility of asserting his individuality amidst the stakes of an unforgiving environment. He would not just face the competition, he would rise to meet it, not only for himself, but for the values he aspired to embody. But as he prepared to dive into the fray, a final thought crept in, pulling his attention toward his competitors' relentless attempts to derail him. What new obstacles would arise, and how far would they go to maintain their edge? The urgency to not only succeed, but to protect his integrity surged anew, a tempest brewing on the horizon. The moment of confrontation was fast approaching, and Alex needed to be ready.
How would he handle the pressure, the stakes, both personal and professional, that came with this defining chapter of his life? The sun had fully set, the neon glow of the city casting an ethereal ambiance around Alex's workspace. It was a cacophony of colors, a stark contrast to the monochrome doubts that still whispered in the recesses of his mind. As the shadows deepened, a sense of urgency pushed him to reassess his plans. The clock was ticking, not just against the competition, but against the constraints of his own aspirations. Drawing a breath, he pushed away from the workstation, his fingers lingering over the devices strewn about. He could feel the weight of each wiring, each piece of technology he had painstakingly assembled, not as mere extensions of his mentor's legacy, but as embodiments of his vision. This was the turning point. He could either let self-doubt constrict his potential or turn it into fuel for innovation. He remembered the way Mr. Sterling had encouraged him to embrace creativity, not just technical acumen. "Innovation thrives in chaos," he had said, his voice echoing like a mantra. It was a permission slip, one Alex had neglected to fully embrace until now. Calculating strategies both intricate and impulsive, he sat back down, focusing his energy on reimagining his project, where the technology was not just functional, but also resonant and intimate. As he sketched out new ideas, his excitement bubbled over, cleansing the remnants of fear. The revolutionary concept began to take shape, transcending the mundane and inching toward the profound. But it was not without consequence. The need for personal integrity loomed as colorfully as the sketches he was creating. Could he maintain authenticity as he incorporated the technological advancements that would certainly catch his competitor's eye? He had to make a choice. Would he sacrifice his unique vision for the allure of widespread approval, or would he stay true to his purpose? Alex discovered a latent resolve within him, one that urged him to rise above the mere intent to outshine his rival. He envisioned a product that would not merely connect, but touch people in ways they didn't even realize they needed. Hours melted away. The designs grew more ambitious, leaving Alex in a frenzy of creation. Yet while his mind swirled with ideas, uncertainty flickered in his peripheral vision like a distant storm cloud. And there it was again, the message from his rival's side, a veiled attempt to intimidate him personally, a direct shot aimed at his integrity. "Just remember, your success is built on borrowed ideas," it read. Each word thudded like a drumbeat in his chest, a reminder of the looming duel. Alex's instincts tightened. He needed resolve, not just to deflect criticism, but to seek an understanding of who he was transforming into. As he glanced over his sketches, a new idea emerged. The designs would incorporate not just technology, but personal narratives. Real stories sold people on dreams, and by weaving a thread of empathy into the fabric of his project, he could forge a connection far beyond the corporate landscape. His heart raced as he envisioned how he could aim for an authentic change. Would this approach not only elevate his concept, but also enrich others' lives? This was no longer about outpacing the competition. It was about outshining the very concept of superficiality. He departed from his desk and walked to the window, looking out at the vast cityscape. Wasn't every skyscraper a testament to ambition, marked by the dreams of individuals who had battled through the doubt? This deeply personal revelation fueled him further. He wanted to contribute something worthwhile to that skyline. But the question still hung heavily in the air. Would he have the courage to present this innovative vision against the backdrop of unrelenting pressure? Did he have enough time to not just create something remarkable, but also defend it against the swirling chaos that would surely arise? In that pivotal moment,
He realized he had to brace for the confrontation ahead. As the night deepened, thoughts collided within him, both the fear of failure and the thrill of possibility. Ultimately, the pen too was a sword. It would shape the narrative of his success. As dawn approached, the atmosphere shifted, becoming electric with potential. The winds of challenge were rising. Would Alex harness them as a force for his vision, or would he be swept away? The stakes escalated, and the outlines of courage and self-doubt blurred into the horizon. Determination silhouetted against uncertainty heralded a new day. The time had come to face not just the competition, but his deepest fears and aspirations. How far was he willing to go to chase this dream he now dared to claim as his own? Alex plunged back into his sketches with renewed fervor, and the lines he drew were sharper, more intentional than the earlier drafts that had shrouded his workspace. The fear that had clouded him felt muted, as though the clarity of his intentions had woven a protective barrier against doubt. He envisioned his creation not merely as a product, but as a conduit for empathy, a way for users to share their own stories, much like he shared his insecurities with that blank page before him. But ideas needed substance, they required execution. He turned his attention to the technical specifications needed for his designs, breaking down each component into achievable tasks. This phase was crucial, as each small victory would bolster his confidence. He had to ensure that his concept not only resonated on an emotional level, but was also grounded in practical functionality. He picked up his phone to connect with resources, a network of potential collaborators who understood the blend of technology and storytelling he was yearning to achieve. He thumbed through his contacts and hesitated momentarily, second-guessing the wisdom of reaching out.
That lingering doubt crept in, whispering about judgment and rejection. What if they dismissed his ideas? Yet the thought of remaining stagnant ignited a flicker of rebellion within him. He couldn't afford to let anxiety dictate his actions. With determination, he sent messages, introducing his vision, asking for insights, inviting co-creation. Each ping of the outgoing message was an act of defiance against his self-doubt. Responses arrived as either encouragement or silence, but every reply served as a stepping stone, yet another layer to reinforce his belief. As he worked on the details, he recalled Mr. Sterling's insistence on iteration. Be prepared to fail faster. The phrase echoed in his head, charging him with a sense of urgency and relentless spirit to propel himself forward through setbacks. Alex resolved to embrace failure as a teacher, not an enemy. This thought illuminated a pathway he had previously sidestepped, and he felt the weight of each potential setback lighten, a fierce resilience brewing within him. By mid-afternoon, the studio felt alive with the energy of creation. The sketches had transformed into prototypes that beckoned his hand to reach out and refine, to breathe life into ideas. Alex lost track of time, finding himself immersed in an impulsive rhythm that amplified the pulse of his ambition. There was a synergy now between his heart and mind, a dance of creativity that flowed unimpeded. But the dark clouds of comparison loomed just outside his awareness. He opened the latest email from his rival, a calculated taunt meant to unsettle him. Good luck, Alex. I'd hate to see you falter before the big reveal. Each word dripped with condescension, fanning embers of insecurity that threatened to ignite his focus. He inhaled deeply, forcing the intimidation from his mind, redirecting that energy into his project. That looming challenge didn't have to define him. It could compel him to transcend mediocrity. At that moment, clarity struck. He was no longer just a competitor in a technological race. He was a storyteller wielding the power to influence lives. The urgency became palpable. He was ready to unveil a version of himself that was both authentic and innovative. This was about passion, not just prestige. It was about embracing vulnerability in honor of growth. With a fierce look on his face, Alex dusted off the fears of inadequacy. His eyes traced over the sketches before him, but he was not merely looking, he was seeing. This was more than a project. It was an extension of his journey, inviting others on a path marked by curiosity, courage, and change. Yet some questions remained. Would others be willing to share their stories as he intended? Would the world respond to a concept that dared to disrupt the status quo? The sunset bled rich hues through the windows as Alex solidified his plans.
Tomorrow, he would present his concept to an initial group of investors. He had decided to take the plunge and reveal what he had been crafting amid the shadows of doubt. But could he withstand the scrutiny? The echoes of his rival loomed larger in his mind as he prepared. What if they saw through his facade, questioning its worth? The stage was set for confrontation, not just with an audience, but with his own insecurities. Would he emerge as the visionary he aspired to be, or would he retreat, overshadowed by the very doubts he fought so hard to overcome? The tension wound tighter, a prelude to what was to come. As he took one last glance at his sketches, Alex steeled himself for the unveiling, fully aware that the stakes had never felt higher. In the silence of his studio, the air thick with anticipation, Alex felt a cocktail of nerves and excitement coursing through him. The following morning would mark a significant chapter, not only for his project, but for himself. As he sat in the dim light, surrounded by sketches and mock-ups, he confronted the reality that had been kept at bay: the investors, the pitch, the potential rejection. Each moment he spent scrutinizing his designs brought clarity, yet his mind played a relentless game of what-ifs. As the night deepened, he couldn't escape the feeling of isolation creeping in. Yes, he was passionate, and yes, he was determined, but what if he failed to communicate that passion? The echo of his rival nagged at him, reminding him that creativity was not enough. He had to inspire belief in others, a daunting task when self-doubt had become an unwelcome companion. He wandered to the window, drawn by the glow of the city lights. The bustling streets below reminded him of the world waiting to connect with his ideas. He thought back to the moments when his sketches felt half-baked, void of the life that sought to spill from them. In those moments, he hadn't recognized the potential wrapped in vulnerability. Now, standing in view of that expansive city, he chose to pivot. His mantra shifted. It wasn't merely about proving himself to investors. It was about forging connection through shared narratives, about telling stories that mattered. If he could harness that, perhaps the fear would transform into strength. With renewed conviction, he paced, creating mental pathways as he rehearsed his pitch. Each word needed to resonate, not just with the intellect of his audience, but from the heart of his journey. Suddenly, an idea struck him. His presentation wouldn't begin with numbers or concepts. Instead, he would unveil an anecdote, a personal story woven into the fabric of his vision, a tale that mirrored the essence of his designs, the power of storytelling to foster empathy and connection. The thought exhilarated him, and he jotted down notes feverishly. Feeling invigorated, he returned to the cluttered desk, reworking his presentation.
The sketches took on new life as they were coupled with thoughtful narratives. He envisioned the investors, sharp suits, skepticism hidden beneath inquisitive brows, reacting not just to a technical showcase, but resonating with the emotions that defined his work. Yet, as the plan took shape, a creeping apprehension lingered. What if his story didn't land? What if it fell flat, dismissed as mere sentimentality? Alex grappled with the reality that being fully authentic could mean vulnerability, and vulnerability could lead to rejection. The tension crackled in the air. He took a deep breath, expelling the clench of ambition that stifled him. As the hours dragged on, a sense of camaraderie developed with his sketches. They weren't just designs, they were fragments of his life, his passion, his struggles. With every erasure and reimagining, Alex began to see the manifestation of not just an idea, but a reflection of his own chaotic journey towards self-acceptance. Finally, as dawn broke and painted the studio in hues of hope, he felt that emotional tightrope tighten again. The sun's rays softened the harsh realities of the night. Was he ready to leap into that unknown? Would they connect with his vision, or would they merely see failings? With the presentation fast approaching, a decision crystallized within him. He would present not just a project, but a piece of himself. As he closed his laptop, the questions that had once paralyzed him now invigorated his spirit. This was his moment. The stage was set, and he was no longer a mere competitor. With a steadying breath, he prepared to confront the arena of scrutiny. But even as he felt the spark of readiness, lurking in the back of his mind was a troubling question he couldn't shake. Was he prepared not only to embrace his vision, but to face the reality of his opponent's influence? The challenge was greater than he anticipated, and Alex understood with new clarity that some battles lay not in the world outside, but within. Would this moment be the turning point that defined him, or merely a step into an inevitable vulnerability? The sun crested over the horizon, illuminating his studio with a golden glow that contrasted the swirling doubt within him. Alex rose from his seat, his heart thumping against his ribcage as he prepared to make his way to the meeting. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if gravity itself conspired against him. The large presentation hall loomed ahead, and with it, a melange of potential disapproval and validation. The lobby was bustling with figures in crisp attire, their conversations a symphony of ambition and power. Alex's palms grew slick as he slid them against his trousers, trying to calm his surging nerves.
The security guard waved him in, and internally, Alex grappled with his sense of inadequacy. Who was he really among these titans of industry? Just a young man with dreams, oscillating between fear and hope.
As he entered the hall, the light shifted, and everything felt amplified, his pulse quickening, the air thick with a mixture of anxiety and ambition. In his mind's eye, he envisioned his sketches pinned to the wall, vibrant and full of life, yearning for acknowledgement. This was the moment to showcase not just his work, but the narrative that enveloped it, the story that could resonate beyond mere aesthetics. He spotted his rival across the room, a looming figure exuding confidence, with a smirk that reeked of entitlement. That familiar sting of comparison pricked at Alex's resolve. Would the investors see through his story to the truth of his work, or would they merely be swayed by the polished presentation of his opponent? He felt the urge to retreat, to escape the scrutiny of the sharp suits and skeptical expressions. The thought crossed his mind. What if he faltered? But alongside that fear, a flicker of resolve ignited within him. They were here to hear him out, to understand his journey. A connection could form if he relinquished his inhibitions. He approached the podium, a mist of sweat dampening his shirt, and inhaled deeply. As he began his pitch, the carefully crafted narrative spilled forth like a release of pent-up emotion. He shared his personal anecdotes with a vulnerability that felt both terrifying and liberating. The investors leaned in, their skepticism morphing into intrigue. He related his sketches to moments in his life, the late nights spent in solitude, the bursts of inspiration born from moments of despair. In that stunning respect, he was transformed from a mere designer into a storyteller whose art was a mosaic of experiences. The room shifted. I could see eyes soften, expressions transforming from indifference to curiosity. Alex was tapping into something deeper than aesthetics. He invited them to reflect on their own narratives, to connect through shared human experiences. Then, a voice cut through his moment, a question from a particularly stern investor, her brow furrowed like a looming storm. But isn't authenticity too subjective? How do we measure success through your lens of vulnerability? The challenge struck hard. Alex felt the weight of uncertainty press against him. He needed to address the reality that his suggestions might evoke skepticism in a world driven by metrics and profit margins. This was a pivotal moment, one that could either draw him into a deeper well of self-doubt or propel him toward newfound confidence. He paused, considering his response. Empathy cannot be quantified in spreadsheets. It's about creating meaningful relationships between those who experience the work and the stories that inspired it. Success is in resonance, in leaving a footprint on one another's lives. A moment of silence enveloped the hall. Time ticked slowly as he scanned the room, taking in the faces that had transformed before him.
Uncertainty persisted like a faint whisper at the edge of his consciousness, but now he understood the importance of standing firmly in his truth. As he concluded, a wave of energy enveloped him. The applause was tentative at first, but grew in fervor. Yet the true battle had only begun. With a lingering uncertainty behind the fervent applause, a thought echoed in the recesses of his mind. What would it cost him to sustain this authenticity in a world where it could so easily be stripped away? He exited the stage with his heart racing, uncertain if he had struck the right chords or merely provoked curiosity. But one thing was clear. This experience had ignited a new journey within him. Facing investors was just the first step. He knew the road ahead would require far deeper introspection. What remained uncharted, however, was the fight to keep his true self intact amidst the pressures of success. As he walked away, he felt the stirring of something profound, a commitment to not just thrive professionally, but to remain authentically himself in the turbulent waves of the industry. The question loomed over him as he stepped into the hallway, lingering. Would he possess the resilience to face the challenges that authenticity would invite? As Alex exited the hall, the applause still ringing in his ears, a whirlwind of emotions clashed within him. The adrenaline from his presentation surged through his veins, invigorating yet alarming. He had spoken from his heart, but now, with every step, he felt the weight of reality settle back into place. Echoes of skepticism loitered like dark clouds above his head. Could authenticity survive in this landscape where success was often measured by metrics rather than meaningful connections? He made his way to a small cafe around the corner, seeking solace in the familiar aroma of roasted beans. The warm dimness enveloped him, momentarily shielding him from the harsh realities outside. The barista, a cheerful young woman with a bright smile, greeted him, and for a brief moment, Alex allowed himself to be distracted from his thoughts. He ordered a coffee and took a seat in a corner, gazing through the window as strangers passed by, absorbed in their own narratives. But instead of finding solace, Alex found himself reflecting on the very core of his identity as an artist. Was his work merely a reflection of his experiences, or could it transcend personal boundaries to become something universal? He dug into the depths of his creative spirit, questioning whether he could sustain his authenticity under the pressures of commercial success while staying true to himself. The rattle of coffee cups lifted him from his thoughts, pulling him back to the present. The cafe bustled with life, a contrast to the solitude he felt creeping back in. Suddenly, a new sense of determination flickered within him. Perhaps the answer didn't reside solely within himself. What if he sought guidance from others who had faced similar dilemmas?
He imagined convening with fellow artists, sharing struggles and victories, creating a network that championed vulnerability rather than shunned it. In that moment, a plan began to form. He could host a series of small workshops in his studio, a platform for artists to collaborate, share stories, and embrace authenticity. It was a way to nurture creativity while forming bonds that transcended superficiality. The thought brought warmth to his chest, sparking hope. Yet another question lingered. Would he have the courage to invite others into this vulnerable space he desperately sought for himself? His coffee arrived, and he took a moment to regroup. He scribbled ideas on a napkin, mapping out how to foster a community dedicated to exploring authenticity through art. The act of writing down his intentions ignited clarity. The fear of failure bubbled beneath the surface, but he understood that to thrive, he must confront it head-on, a necessary lesson for both him and those who would join his workshops. Suddenly, a message notification on his phone pulled him from his thoughts. It was from one of the investors, thanking him for his pitch and expressing genuine interest in his work. Could this be the validation he needed? Instead of elation, apprehension twisted within him. What would their approach mean for the authenticity he sought to uphold? Could he remain true to his vision while aligning with their expectations? Taking a deep breath, he realized the need to define his boundaries. It wasn't enough to simply pursue success. He needed a strategy that prioritized his values. But the looming uncertainty of how to navigate this duality was daunting. As he sipped his coffee, determination flooded through him once more. The workshop would be more than a platform. It would reflect a commitment to forge connections in an industry often martyred by superficiality. Yet with every calculated step towards his goal, a worry sharpened at the back of his mind. What if the pursuit of authenticity attracted critics instead of allies? With that thought lingering heavily, he left the cafe, his pulse quickening. Alex felt invigorated yet apprehensive, the call to action echoing louder with each step he took back to his studio. Would his vision resonate, or would he be engulfed by the very fears he sought to conquer? The path to realizing his aspirations lay ahead, shrouded in ambiguity. But soon enough, clarity would arrive, if only he could summon the courage to face the challenges that awaited him. As Alex entered his studio, the familiar scent of paint and varnish enveloped him, grounding him in a space that felt both like refuge and battleground. With the sunlight streaming through the tall windows, he was reminded of the vibrant palette he loved to explore. But today, it wasn't the colors that called him. It was the decision looming like an unfinished canvas in his mind. He set his bag down and pulled out the napkin with his notes, its creases betraying the intensity of his thoughts. The idea of workshops still electrified him, but the fear that had clung tightly to his ambitions now threatened to smother them altogether. What if the artists he sought out were more interested in protecting their brands than in celebrating their authenticity? He paced the wooden floor, the rhythmic tapping of his shoes serving as a metronome for his thoughts. Each step resonated with a question. How would it feel to bare his soul to others? The vulnerability he hoped to foster was like a fragile thread, beautiful yet susceptible to fraying under the scrutiny of others. Could he create a space where artists felt safe to expose their deepest insecurities, their creative misfires? He stopped by the easel occupying the far corner of the room and stared at a half-finished painting. The canvas depicted a twisted landscape, colors melding chaotically in a way he had never intended. It mirrored his current emotional state, conflicted yet full of potential. What if he used this piece as a starting point in his first workshop? It could symbolize the imperfections that often accompany the journey of creation. He felt a flicker of excitement. Still, clarity was elusive. He needed to be prepared for pushback, for skepticism. What if the artists didn't grasp his vision? Or worse, What if they ridiculed the very platform he was trying to create? With each scenario swirling in his mind, Alex sank into a chair, the weight of uncertainty creeping back. Defending one's authenticity in an atmosphere filled with competition felt like trying to stand firm in quicksand. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, and contemplated the possibility that he too was part of the criticism he feared. Had he ever truly embraced his own creative flaws? Sitting there, the walls of his studio became both witness and confessor. He realized he had hidden his vulnerabilities, masked them with confidence. But was that the way forward? The notion of sharing personal imperfections, of creating an environment that validated each artist's unique struggles, began to sound revolutionary. Perhaps the real challenge lay not just in inviting others to share, but in doing so himself. His phone buzzed again, and the familiar notification sound jolted him from his reverie. It was another message, but this time from a colleague, an artist with whom he had crossed paths at a previous mural project. The essence of her words was clear. Let's collaborate, share the messiness, and create something meaningful. Maybe he wasn't alone in his quest. Perhaps there were others as hungry for connection, for authenticity as he was. As he read her text, he envisioned a community, or better yet, a movement that could thrive amid the murkiness of the art world's expectations.
The idea ignited within him a deeper resolve. The workshops could be a starting point, but perhaps he needed to bolster that foundation with collaborations. Groups cultivated not just around art, but also around shared experiences and emotional resilience. A slow grin spread across his face as he planned possible formats, mingling the workshops with collaborative art pieces. Not only could they create art, but they could script a narrative of authenticity together. Soon, that spark of belief in the idea turned into a blaze of necessity. If he was going to make this work, it required more than just his intuition. It needed action and partnership. It was time to reach out, to embrace the awkwardness of starting a conversation about vulnerability with others. With purpose surging through him, Alex grabbed his phone, ready to initiate the next step of his bold venture. He was no longer merely an artist struggling with authenticity. He was about to take a leap into something larger than himself. But would the response be what he hoped? How would his peers respond to an invitation into the unknown? The moment to confront his fears and share his vision was approaching, and he felt the undeniable tension in the air, one that promised both risk and reward. The sun spilled through the large windows of Alex's studio, illuminating the cluttered space filled with sketches, prototypes, and the rich aroma of fresh ideas. He took a deep breath, feeling a palpable shift in his spirit as he prepared to embrace the moment he had fervently envisioned, the first workshop where artists would gather to explore their vulnerabilities through their craft. With each passing hour, anticipation swelled within him. The workshop's theme was to be creating through chaos, a manifesto that celebrated imperfection and the unexpected turns that came with artistic expression. He believed that together they could forge a new path in the art world, one where authenticity was the new currency and connections were forged over shared struggles instead of competition. The evening before, Alex crafted invitations, decorated with sketches of twisted landscapes and notes about the workshop's vision, conveying his yearning for collaboration. He sent them out to a diverse mix of local artists, painters, storytellers, digital creators, all of whom seemed as if they might be craving the same connections he did. And now, as he stood among the remnants of his initial doubts, a surge of hope filled him. When the day for the workshop finally arrived, so did a diverse group of artists, each carrying their own set of apprehensions along with their supplies. The air buzzed with excitement, yet tinged with nerves. As they gathered in the studio, Alex felt a rush, a blend of nerves and exhilaration that he had never experienced before. As he welcomed everyone, he felt the gravity of the moment settle around him. "I'm so grateful you all could come," he began, his voice steadying with each word.
Today, we're going to create, but more than that, we're going to connect. I want this to be a space where we explore our imperfections and our narratives. He noticed flickers of comprehension and vulnerability surfacing among the attendees as he continued to share his own journey, one marred by self-doubt and the fierce desire for authenticity. With each story, a bond solidified. The walls that once confined their individual fears began to crumble, and an atmosphere of trust blossomed. They worked tirelessly through the day, layering paint, weaving stories into their art, and sharing candid moments that transcended mere technicalities.
laughter intertwined with thoughtful silences, and as they created, Alex observed the energy shift. The very essence of the workshop had ignited a profound transformation. They weren't just creating art, but weaving together the fabric of shared vulnerability, echoing the very ideals he held dear. A few of the participants shared their struggles openly, exchanging encouragement and affirmation in an environment free from judgment. As Alex watched their candid interaction, he recognized that every brushstroke, every word exchanged, was a testament to the power of authenticity. The fear that once held him hostage slowly dissipated, replaced by an undeniable feeling of purpose. By the time the workshop concluded, the canvases before them told stories deeper than the paint alone could convey. They were testaments to resilience, vulnerability, and the art of connection. Alex felt a profound sense of fulfillment, a recognition of his own growth, not merely in hosting the event, but in embracing the very essence of his journey. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects of their gathering burgeoned. Artists started reaching out to collaborate, inspired by the connections they had forged that day. Alex organized follow-up sessions, extending the workshop into a series, opening dialogues that traversed not just art, but life itself. He recognized that he was not only crafting a movement against the confines of superficiality, but also rediscovering his own values. In the culmination of this journey, as Alex stood amidst works crafted by several collective hearts, the weight of self-doubt that once burdened him transformed into a legacy of courage, a testament to the authentic connections he had cultivated. He felt a surge of confidence. The bonds he formed were now stepping stones, guiding him forward as an artist with a purpose greater than his own ambitions. Finally, in a moment of clarity, Alex realized that his biggest achievement was not the success of the project, nor acclaim from the investors, but rather the profound transformation of embracing and sharing literacy through art. It was a manifestation of who he had become, a connector of stories, a champion of authenticity. Rejuvenated and emboldened, Alex stepped forward, ready to continue forging pathways for creativity and connection.
This was a new beginning, and he was determined to nurture the legacy of vulnerability and authentic expression he had begun. Now it's your turn to act. Don't wait even one more second to subscribe now to ensure you stay updated with more exclusive and inspiring stories of personal growth and transformation. Leave a like if this journey moved you. Your support fuels our mission. Comment below with your thoughts about Alex's journey and share this video with at least 5 friends who need a dose of motivation and courage in their lives. This is the moment to show your support.